say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. You tell me that it's evolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. Don't you know that you can count me out?
All right. Got kickstarted with that lecture with Revolution by the Beatles. Obviously, keeping with our theme so far this year. You know, geez, we went through scientific revolution, enlightenment, American Revolution, French Revolution, Industrial Revolution. Might as well keep going. Now we have the Latin American revolutions now. All right, so you guys have been doing this a little bit with a little, introduction activity you guys have been working on the past couple days with your packets. So with that being said, here's some unit goals that we'll be focusing on over the next couple days. Again, this is not really a unit because we're only spending a couple days on this. But one, to understand the causes of the Latin American Revolution. What caused this to happen? Two, how was this inspired by Latin American how was this inspired by American and French revolutions? Three, what connections to Napoleon did this have with the leaders in Latin America? So how did Napoleon happen thousands of miles away? How did that impact this? And then what were some of the similarities and differences between the revolutions that we talked about? All right, so just so we're on the same page, Latin American revolutions, areas that we're going to be talking about over the next several days. Obviously, you got here Mexico. Obviously, I assume you know where Mexico is located at. So obviously, it's right here. Excuse me. And then to start off, and a lot of what you guys read about in your guys' little introductory thing, I don't know if you guys can see where my cursor's at, but I'm sure a lot of you guys maybe even vacationed here at some point in your guys' lives, or you more than likely will. But just off the coast of Florida, a couple hundred miles away in the Caribbean, you have Puerto Plata, Puerto Vallarta, it's the Dominican Republic. So on this side right here where my cursor's at, this is the Dominican Republic right here, on the right east side of the island. West side of the island is Haiti. Haiti to this very day is one of the most poorest countries in the world. I think we very briefly talked about this, about how currently right now in Haiti you have the president was just assassinated a couple months ago. They took a group of like 17 American hostages. They want like $18 million for the ransom. So it's kind of that's the reach of the world of what we're talking about. And then right down here in South America, on Monday and Tuesday, we'll focus on this region in Brazil and Peru and Panama and Colombia, Argentina, some of the revolutions that were happening here as well. So just so you're able to kind of conceptualize and visualize kind of where we're talking about the region, this is where we're talking about. All right. So in your guys' packets, you guys have been looking at causes. What caused the American Revolution? And hopefully you're seeing a lot of very similar themes that what we've talked about so far in the past several units. Usually there's a group of people who are feeling like their rights are being violated. Poverty, lack of food, lack of jobs, lack of opportunity. All these are very common themes. Guys, it's no secret for why revolutions are going to happen. So just to kind of reiterate, all this stuff you're copying down your guys' guided notes. So really there are three countries, guys, that had a huge impact on this region of the world that I'm pointing to here. Mexico, the Dominican Republic, and South America. Spain, France, and Portugal I should say three, not two, were the three predominant powers that had territory in this region of the world. There were colonies. They had colonies in this region. So very similar to how the British had us as a colony and how we had to buy British things. We were controlled by the British government. Very similar things here with these three countries. Spain, France, Portugal had huge amounts of land. They controlled the people, the land, the resources of this area in Latin America and South America. And then these foreign powers, Spain, France, and Portugal, are going to profit off of these people. They're going to go in and basically take the people that are the natives that are in these areas and use them in some cases as slave labor. They're going to take their resources and they're going to profit off of them, as well as they're going to strip them of their freedoms. So hopefully there alone, you're saying, okay, well, the mind should be spinning in terms of revolution. Eventually people in this region are going to stand up to this. And I'm sure you should be getting in your head of boom, American Revolution, boom, Enlightenment, John Locke and Hobbes and social contract and Rousseau and Voltaire and all these things are going to have, major impacts on that. All right, so who are we talking about here? So I'll show this whole thing to you. Oops. There we go. All right, so who's going to be like the main drivers of or basically who's involved? So you have lower class people, as we'll get to here in a little bit, versus the colonial rulers, like the power. So again, Spain, France, Portugal, the three powers are going to be kind of them versus them, this side versus that side. Okay, so what's going to happen? You're going to have a series of uprisings that are going to occur. As you'll see in the when. So starting in like the 1790s, French Revolution. That's right in the height of the French Revolution, guys. So you have the French Revolution happening in France, and then you have the Latin American Revolution obviously happening in Latin America and the areas we just talked about. Now, these things are not going to happen all at once. As I talked about before, you have the Dominican Republic, you have countries in South America like Peru and Brazil and Argentina. So this all isn't going to happen at once. It's going to happen kind of sporadically over this 30-year period. From 1790 to about 1820, you're going to have these different things occurring all throughout this region. And obviously where? Latin American region. Okay, so causes. Now this again, causes of why the Latin American Revolution is going to happen. Again, no secret. It shouldn't be anything crazy. Things that we've already talked about already, in prior units. But you're going to have built into Latin America, you're going to have an unequal social structure where you're going to have people, they can't move up the ladder, they're stuck, whatever they're born into, they're going to stay into it. So there's inequalities there. So in your guys' notes, you guys should be copying this down. I should have a triangle. You guys should be filling this out. So basically, we'll start at the very top. The very top of the structure, the social circle in Latin America, you have the peninsulars. This is the highest level that you could be born into of what you can achieve in Latin America. So these people were Spanish-born people. They were born in Spain. They came to Latin America, and they were chosen as the ruling class. So in terms of how do you think they were perceived by locals? So these were people that were outsiders. They weren't born in Latin America. They didn't have a true understanding of the region. They weren't born there. They were a part of the ruling class, a part of the Spanish. The foreigners that came in and were ruling these people. So again, this is a very, very small percent of the population. They were not even 1% of the population. Again, these were born in Spain. Now if you look over here, they were the only group that could hold a high office in Spain. So the Spanish government set up a local government in Latin America, and they would have the peninsulars would be the ruling people there in Latin America. They were Spanish blood. They were able to keep the loyalty of the locals there by bribes and things of that nature, and then this group controlled the wealth and most of the power in Latin America. They had the power, they had the wealth in these colonies in Latin America. So they were the top. Then you have the Creoles. The Creoles were like the next rung, just a step below. Now these people had Spanish blood, but they weren't born in Spain. They were born in Latin America. So this was a pretty good chunk of the population. So about 1/5, so 22% of the population in Latin America were of the Creole class. Again, Spanish blood, they had Spanish ancestry, but they were born in Latin America. So again, they did have some power. If you look, they did have a good amount of education. They were educated in Spain, so they were sent from Latin America back to Spain. They would go through the Spanish education system. They could be officers in the high levels of military rank in the military. They did have some wealth and they did have some power in the Spanish colonies, but here was the difference: that they could not hold high level of political offices. So they were being, I guess you could say, discriminated against because they didn't have the full ranking of the peninsulars of being born in Spain, so they were treated a little bit differently. So although they did have a lot of power, they did have some privileges, they did have wealth and some land, they were always kind of treated a little bit differently because they weren't born in Spain. So they're kind of looked down upon a little bit in that regard. And then you have the Mositos and the Mulattoes were the next rung down. So the Mositos were they were a little bit mixed. They were like native Indian ancestry along with European. So again, they were like down that low chung, that rung. Now notice they weren't able to hold a lot of these things. They didn't have wealth. They didn't have a lot of power. They weren't able to hold military rank and government positions. The Mulattoes. This was European blood ancestry and African ancestry. So they were like a mixed race. And then you have your enslaved Africans. Were here. 6.4% population. Slaves were brought in. Now notice in here I have a little bullet point. This group did serve an economic purpose because of their labor. They were used to these big plantations and big open fields to extract the natural resources. So, although again, same thing, they weren't able to hold high level they weren't able to hold office, they weren't able to hold military rank. Obviously, they were enslaved, but their purpose was important for the economy to keep the economy moving, to extract the resources and to make the products that would enrich the colonial areas. And then you have your natives, the Native Americans, which is about half the population, guys. This is a huge chunk. Now, again, notice what I have in the thing here, that they were of little economic value, mostly because they weren't really willing to adapt to colonial rule. They were very, very, very oppressed. They didn't really have a huge economic purpose. So, very oppressed group. So, again, you're kind of seeing this here. I'm kind of going to skip through this. I just already went over that with this, so I'm not really telling you anything that's really new. All right, so the second reason for the Latin American Revolution is mercantilism. What does that mean? It basically means that these colonial powers, Spain, Portugal, France, were exploiting Latin Americans' resources and their economy to make their own country rich. So you see this thing here. So right here, you have the colonies. They would take their gold, silver, fur, lumber, their food, sugar, whatever. They would take their resources, send it back to France, Portugal, Spain. Portugal and France and Spain would then take those goods and make something out of it in the factory, and then they would sell it back to the colonies, and the colonial people would have to buy it. So it's obviously you're extracting your own resources from their own land. You're making something out of it, and you're making them rebuy it. So obviously this is exploitation of the mother countries. You guys should have been reading about this in your guys' assignments anyway. But basically, this gets the mother countries, Spain, Portugal, France, rich. They're taking somebody else's resources and getting rich off of it. Nationalism. This was a strong desire for independence. They want to control their own land, the economy, and resources. So what's going on is that you see these foreigners, France, Spain, and Portugal, going into Latin America, and they're basically getting rich off of them. They're treating them as slaves. They're taking their resources. They're using them as slave labor. And you start having this nationalistic movement where these local natives become resentful. They want to control their land. They want to get rich. They want to control their own destiny. They want to have their own government and have self-rule. Now, what's going to happen is, guys, the Creoles, believe it or not, this is the least oppressed group, as you guys saw before in the thing, but they are the best educated. This is the group that is going to basically start leading the way for a revolution. Because again, they're born in Latin America and they're educated. They've become aware of some of the things that are going on in the world. And then finally, last three things in terms of causes, is you have the American and French revolutions are going to act as sources of inspiration for the Latin American people. The American success, the French successes, Enlightenment ideas, as you guys see here, number 5. The Creoles are going to be learning about that, and they're going to be implementing some of those tactics, some of those ideas within their own country. And then finally, the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon's brother became king of Spain. So basically, you have the locals who may have been loyal to the Spanish king. Now you have a French king coming in, and they felt no loyalty to him. And we'll learn more about that tomorrow. So adios.